Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. When it comes to success and bravery and betting on yourself, I can only think of one person, Mr. Richard Blank. He's the CEO of the Costa Rica call center. This man here has been through his own fair share of adversities, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. Let's go. Mr. Richard, welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, sir. Thank you for being a guest on my show today, man.
Michael, so happy to be here. Long time coming, finally made it. So I'm definitely going to overcome some adversity and tricks with you and your amazing audience.
Let's go, man. Let's go, man. Richard, thank you, brother, for being here, man. Obviously we've spoken a good bit and hear about your story to developing a successful business that you have now, man. But obviously the story just didn't, it just didn't happen overnight. Obviously you had to grind hard, you had to work hard and overcome some things. And something that I read about your bio and understood from your story is you chose to bet on yourself, man. And a lot of people struggle with betting on themselves, going against the grain and go against the odds. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you had to overcome some of these adversity to surmount some of these things?
Of course, my friend. I was thinking of the long game. A lot of first downs to get touchdowns. I didn't need to rule the world after my first day. And so this really started with my foundation, how I was raised. I was born into a certain family, but I also surrounded myself with certain friends. And so I grew up in Northeast Philly. When I graduated the proud Abington High School back in 91, I decided, as you mentioned, double down on me. My favorite class was Spanish. So unlike a lot of my friends that were under enormous amounts of pressure to go to Ivy League, study medicine, law, follow in certain footsteps, I decided to be the romantic. I just didn't really want to live in that invisible box where you can't expand your wings. But why did I do this? Because I was getting a lot of positive reinforcement. It just wasn't a parlor trick or something cute for my parents to brag to their friends. When I met people that were Latino and I showed my interest in my grammar and vocabulary, they knew I had something. There was a spring in my step. And if you love something, it's not really studying or work. It's really about your destiny and growing, almost like going to the gym. You like the burn. You like the structure. You like the discipline. And so at the University of Arizona, besides having the greatest time with the weather and the fun and the friends, I was a Spanish major. And I interned for Telemundo. So I was paying it forward. I was getting the experience. I was testing the waters to see if this was really a good bet for me. Post-grad, I worked for the importers of Corona, so obviously I was getting an ROI. But then, when I was 27 years old, I had a 1 in a million opportunity to move to Costa Rica. And once you can get past your parents' guilt, then the world is your oyster. And so here we are today, my friend, 23 years later. And that's kind of how I was building on that momentum in order to get to where I am today.
I want to follow up and ask you, where did that resilient mindset come from, though? Because you have that tenacity that you don't hear from too many people. Where did that originate from, though, man? Every single thing that came at you, you took advantage of these opportunities, and you didn't let doubt get in your way. You didn't let friends tell you, you sure you want to do that? Why you want to go over there? These types of things. Where did that come from?
And let me give you a collage. It really goes back to great grandpa. When he came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century from Romania and Russia, my two sets of grandparents, they went through Ellis Island. They were in the garment industry. They had to learn English. So they were nomads. They were drinking life. And I kind of wanted the same. And just because my parents followed in certain footsteps, it doesn't mean that they couldn't relate to it. They weren't learning a second language, and so it was difficult for them to compare apples. I was more of a romantic. But I tell you what, if you have a passion towards something and it's done with honorable intentions, the people that truly love you should encourage you.
Most
Now,
definitely.
in Philadelphia, you tease people and you break their back a little bit. But it was the fear of the unknown. I was really that one adventurer that was willing to put a bandana of my stuff on the back of a stick, walk down a country road into the sunset. I was really bold enough to do this. And it's about really having that passion towards life and knowing that if you do things in resistance, you'll drown, like swimming against current or not
Right.
using the wind or gravity to your advantage. And so at such a young age, I really thought Spanish was cool. The cultures in all these different countries, it's a well-spoken language, and it made me marketable. I was the only one out of my friends that could do it. And so for me, the light went off at an early age to stick with it, because there's a lot of people that they love you and they're concerned about you, but it's the overprotective parent that will never let the child on the roller coaster ride. Then you never get to experience loop-de-loops of life. So I had to make that decision, my friend, to live somebody else's life or to have this sort of vigor and to really go for it. And I was willing to come home with my tail between my legs, but guess what, pal? That didn't happen. Here we are today.
So if you was to look back at it, obviously that did not happen. I I could think for some of our listeners right now that could be in at a point, like a crossroad right now in their lives, and they're thinking, well, my parents expected these things for me, as in like your parents are already expecting Ivy League education,
Mm-hmm.
and now some of that is coming with guilt because
Mm-hmm.
you're deviating from what the plan is. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of just believing in yourself and trusting yourself and not cowering to certain types of situation and just believing yourself towards the point of just like taking authority in your own life opposed to anybody else's?
You got it. I'll give you two answers to that. The first one was the mature, responsible answer. At 18 years old, I said, why go to Ivy League and pay those sort of prices back in 91? Why don't I go to Arizona, get in-state tuition and spend just a couple $1,000s a year on an education? That saved me every penny. So I was being responsible that way. And secondly, let's look at it as a mature. I wasn't ready for that sort of studies. I might have failed out, not studied hard enough, wasted their money. So I think it's kind of responsible to know right bus, right seat. I'll make the team. I went from a left wingman to a goalie on my hockey team, and then I stayed a goalie. So you got to find the spot where you belong. But let's just go back to why I did this. I believe in dedicated practice. I really do. And these professional athletes, when they were young, they just didn't go to Pee Wee football. They were probably throwing footballs and Nerf footballs in their front yard and constantly. And, you know, it's interesting. I was very fortunate to know and to live with professional athletes. Eddie George went to Abington High School till 10th grade.
That's my
Sean Wooden
guy.
graduated with me and played at Notre Dame and also went to the Dolphins. And when I was at Arizona, I lived with Khalid Reeves the year he went to the Final Four against Arkansas. Post-grad, I lived with Ben Davis when he was a rookie for the Suns. And so I'm living with winners, real winners. And these cats were telling me back in the day when they were growing up, they would go out first thing in the morning after breakfast and not come home until those lights came on at night and mom told you to come home, and all they were doing all day long was on either the basketball court or playing handball or tag, running around and playing with your friends the way we grew up. And so that's what they did. It was dedicated practice of not just having the ability, but then aligning yourself with a certain coach, which could then give you that structure and skill. And as Lyd used to say, is look at it as a professional, as a business, compared to just being a young athlete that's in this whirlwind of fame and fortune. And so I got to see these individuals during their quiet moments, and they were as humble as the day is long while they're on national TV on ESPN highlights. And it also showed me something else, my friend. As high as you can go, you can always be grounded. And these are individuals that would call their mothers and have their friends from high school or elementary school still be with them. They didn't play big shot. In fact, they didn't like the people that were one and dones. They really liked individuals that had depth. And that's why I roomed with them, because I wasn't a sports expert. I'm just a nice guy. And so I could just hang out with you and watch a movie and not ask you for 50 autographs or for favors. And so when you align yourself with people that are on their own trajectory, because I'm not an athlete like that, but I saw the dedicated practice, the more than above and beyond what they did in practice with their coaches and their natural training. And I loved it. And so if you have that sort of fidelity, like I did towards languages, public speaking, writing, rhetoric, you will win. You're Danny on the boat punching and on the beach kicking when Miyagi's not around, because you need to do the additional training to be Johnny in the Karate Kid. And so I respect anybody, from a musician to an artist to an athlete to anybody that is dedicated and they're going all the way and they're going the distance. That to me is someone that I would love to align myself with.
Speaking of alignment and direction and decision, I see you as someone that's winning in life, but took it to another level and start winning in business. You made the decision to go to Costa Rica and start this business, and now you guys are flourishing. Can you tell us a little bit about your business, what you guys do, and then some of the things that led to you starting this business to say, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to put in the dark work to grow this business to a flourishing business? Because all of the things I just heard you said in regards to someone staying humble and putting in the work to get to that level of success like the athletes did, you did that, I would say, for business and stuff like that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Do you have your pen ready? Here we go.
I'm always taking notes, brother.
Is a bilingual nearshore dedicated call center. We work with sales, lead generation, appointment setting, inbound customer support, back office support, non-voice support. So I'm sitting in a location that can house 300 seats with a backup generator, IT, and ready to go. But the industry changed. A lot of people working from home. But when I came down here, I was only supposed to be at my friend's center for 2 months. I stayed for 4 years. I learned the business not from C-level, but from the inside out. And so when I got to see that people wanted their dignity and what was the best way to relate to people in regards to retentions and support and onboarding and training, I really, in essence, learned the business. It was my master's. And so in my mid-30s, when I had capital impulse control, and I keep mentioning that word, maturity, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. Yeah, but look where you are today. Let's all calm down, Michael. I was initially renting a turnkey station from a blended center, like a glorified internet cafe. I had no privacy, but someone else was carrying all that weight. So I could pay the, my station cost, got the overhead there and the margin and the taxes. And so I could scale accordingly. It was top dollar, but I could move. And so after a couple of years of stable clients in building, I then rented space and I purchased used furniture and computer equipment, not used underwear. I mean, there's certain things you can buy, like a used car, used car. And so I could get these things on pennies on a dollar. And look how I look. So I needed a face man for me that was local to drop the price another 50%. I also needed to delegate. So I needed experts in IT and human resources, accountants, attorneys. I was a trunk of a tree. I needed the branches and the roots for that sort of stability. And also, my friend, I do it all in cash. I never overextended myself. I acted my wage and I knew my pace. So I didn't have to compromise my ethics and I could sleep well at night. The main thing was paying my taxes and their salaries so you can maintain your reputation while being a guest in this country. And so I was extremely selective of the campaigns that come in here because it is a Catholic country. We do not do sports books, casinos, stocks, pharmacies, or sweepstakes, no matter what Hollywood says it does. And I know boiler rooms are cool, and Blake and Glenn Ross tells you coffees for closers. Vin Diesel closing, telling you where should we send the check, to your office or to your mansion. Nice mansion. I mean, you can pitch like that, but let me put it this way. There's a lot of people that don't earn a living like that. They can retain a client. They can maintain these relationships because most companies today, Michael, are preferring omni-channel non-voice support like chat and emails, while a lot of people press 0 and would love to see
right.
myself and my people. So we will always have that luxury trade. But in a nutshell, my friend, slow and steady. You're looking at someone that's almost celebrating their 16th year in business come February 6th. In an exceptionally competitive industry, this is a 1 in a million shot. The stars were aligned. And so what does that make me do? It makes you humble. And here's the thing, my friend. You want to know the real secret to business?
What is it?
It's not the money, because gold and jewels lose its luster. It's paying it forward. It's really giving people momentum, and not just giving you a compliment and calling you champ. No, Michael, man, I saw the 44 sales you did last week. I heard that call with Mrs. Jones, and you were fantastic there. And then if your mother shows up, I go downstairs and tell her those things. And so I've realized that the soft skills that you and I were raised with from our parents, and especially our grandparents, are the sort of things that I can use today that's universal. It's very transparent. And it's given me that sort of stature, because people complain CEOs don't know who you are and they treat you like just a number. But if I extend that sort of relationship and company culture through playing pinball machines downstairs, or training with you, or just getting a chance to know you, that's made my career that much easier, my friend. There's no surprises, and my clients love me for it, because I'm authentic. And I think that if you can be sincere with people and forthright, let them know what's happening, but give them solutions, and be accountable, even if you weren't there that day. Yo, man, just pay for the spill, pay the bill, and let's get out of here. You didn't do it. And I'm willing to fall on many swords. I'm willing to do these things in order to keep the tone. I won't compromise ethics, but I'm not going to let one little thing ruin a relationship. I mean, there are ways to decompress, and to write a draft and not send it, to sleep on it, to readjust yourself. So you and I, my friend, can maintain that sort of relationship. And that's what reduces attrition and gets people to work with you for longer periods of time.
So my follow-up to that is, to that business owner, either that new up-and-coming business owner or that seasoned business owner that's listening to this podcast right now, you have a phenomenal way of connecting with people and empowering people through your voice and through how you communicate. I could tell.
Thank you.
What is it that they could take away from things that you've experienced, things that you've done, that they could implement into their business, even if it's just one thing or two things or three things that they could take away from your experience that they could start implementing into their business now?
Oh, Michael, it's so easy. The first thing is a positive escalation. What does that mean? Compliment the secretary that just transferred the call to Michael. She just gave you the pass to pitch. Let them know Judy is amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I'm going to say it verbally. And at the end of the call, when I send you the meeting minutes and the follow-up, I'm going to mention Judy in writing as well. Why, Michael? So when I'm building my pipeline and call your company back, they know who I am. I get a hero's welcome. They add to my momentum, more company culture, and assisting me in closing these deals. The first thing you should do when prospecting a phone call is do a company name spike. Say the name of the company better than the person answering the call. You're using your anonymity for the first couple seconds. Don't do it for the whole call. That's shady. But your first impression is saying the name of your company. Overcoming Adversity Podcast. How you doing today? You're not going to hang up on me. At least I bought 10 seconds of your time. Instead of saying, who is this? Or we're good, thanks. You're going to say, hey, who's this? Yeah, I got you, Michael. I anchored with you. And so these are very good soft skills to be able to not angle your way into a call. Also, do your due diligence like you and I have done with one another. If you're leaving a custom-made voicemail, writing about an email, going to some cocktail party, or trying to separate yourself from others, look at a LinkedIn profile, website, photographs, things like that. You'll start off on third base and 6 paces ahead from the next guy calling you sir and trying to chum it up with you. You got to be kidding me. And so these are the sort of things that through just default and filtering, I've received a higher percentage in metrics of callbacks and conversion ratios by just knowing Judy's name at your 5th year anniversary and a couple other things about your company.
Hmm.
Man, if you call me up and you say that I'm from Philly, I collect pinball machines and I have an Art Deco building with neon lights and marquees, I pretty much have my credit card at the ready and it's yours to lose. I mean, you've already buttered my muffin, man. Come on. And so these are the sort of things that instead of making 100 calls a day, Michael, make 84. Take an extra 2 or 3 minutes to really bond with people. And don't be hard on yourself. CEOs are always tough on themselves. I think the greatest thing you should do is to look at yourself in the mirror today and give yourself 5. And when your head hits the pillow and you have these moments of clarity, Michael, you got to know that you did your day with honorable intentions, regardless of the outcome. If you're going to judge yourself by money, then you're going to lose. There's always some cat with an extra dollar in his pocket.
Right.
But if you do something long term, you might have that repeat client or that better reputation where your kids will be proud of you because daddy's doing the right thing. And I like that sort of stuff, my friend. I could have grown a lot faster and larger if I had chosen gray area things. But in the Maltese Falcon with Sam Spade, I ain't the fall guy. It's not going to happen with me. It's Peter Lorre. But it's not going to be me. I want to make my family and friends proud. And I keep mentioning Abington. I have a second language scholarship that I give to an individual that wants to study languages at university level. I'll pay for their freshman books. And I was just inducted in their 2023 class Hall of Fame for business. Now, listen, I'm not living vicariously through high school. I'm not that cat that wears my Letterman jacket. But this is something that I'm paying it forward. These amazing teachers and the late principal Norman Schmidt wrote me college recommendation letters, Michael. They offset my grades, if you know where I'm going with that.
Wow.
And if it weren't for these guys, none of this would have ever happened. So I'm going to say thank you to not only my alma mater, but all my friends, family, loved ones, and incredible people in my life that said, go, Richard, go. Well, guess what, Michael? It's my turn now. I'm going to go everybody that's been supporting me. And I love that sort of circle. Now that circle's complete, my friend. And that's the sort of thing that helps you rest at night.
Absolutely, man. Wow. For you guys that's listening, I hope you guys had some key takeaways for this episode here. I want to follow up, Richard. You know, this is the Overcoming Adversity podcast, and many people in life is going to have setbacks, obstacles, right? And when I mentioned you starting this podcast, you're super, super, super resilient. Can you speak to our audience and to our listeners that may be facing an obstacle or setback? If you've experienced any of those in your personal life or within your business, how did you overcome those things?
Gauge the severity of it. Listen, if someone chops my arm off or gouges my eyes out, that's some serious stuff. But if a friend disappoints you or a client doesn't fulfill their needs, I think life's a little bit bigger than that. I'm not going to gauge myself into social media. This is a very interesting life of twists and turns. And I mentioned earlier about not being hard on yourself. I also don't want you to be too brazen where you're out there, breaking glass. But there is that expression about putting your chest out. I mean, if you almost look at the Greek goddess Eos, who's the Rolls Royce, emblem, and also on the front of these ships, this is a woman with wings that's just putting it out there and expecting the world. And you're going to die when you're 100 years old. And you get one shot at this thing. And how do you really want to do this? I prefer to dance in the rain, and I prefer to compliment as many people as possible. Carpe diem, man. And you are a very proud hero that protected our democracy and liberty.
Seize the day.
And you've seen things that we haven't seen, but you were also brave enough to be a knight, to really follow in that tradition of chivalry that we write stories about, and your great grandchildren will talk about this. And I'm proud of you. And that's the sort of thing that some people like to talk about or not to talk about, but you have to understand that there are people like myself that might have sat on the sidelines that see this and wish we could. And we really wish we had that one moment in life where we can really see what we're made of. When money and your watch and where you live and even the weather that day don't even matter. You're just in a certain moment in life where you are making a serious decision on your almost your soul. And I I respect people that have lived through that, because I think they come out of that with such clarity and such spirituality. And my friend, I don't think the little things hurt you anymore. And it's almost like you expect it. And I wish I could learn something like that. And so anytime we have veterans here, people have served, not only do they get a hero's welcome, but I try to incorporate any sort of advice, training, mindset into the call center culture, because they were trained to be winners and leaders and the best. And so these are other areas in which I could learn. And so I know I go on some tangents, but Michael, man, you bring some stuff out of people, and they are comfortable enough to be so well rehearsed. It's incredible that you can get these sort of instantaneous feelings from your audience. And so it's good stuff, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. I want to follow up about leadership.
Yeah.
I've seen leadership when I served in the military. I've seen it when I was a train master on the railroad, and I've seen leadership when I worked for the government in Washington D.C. on different levels.
Yeah.
And I think unique leadership is unique, right? And your way of leading your team and leading yourself is going to be different than the next CEO or the next founder. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of leadership, but leading oneself, motivating oneself, and just striving towards greatness and becoming that winner that you're trying to be in order to like lead other people, for other people to follow you? And so if you can speak towards that magnitude of what that is, because I think when I see some CEOs and I see some business owners, I think that's some things that's missing. And I hear that a lot because they'll complain about their employees, they'll complain about their staff, they'll complain about a lot of things. And I always ask them, how are you leading your team?
I don't like to hit the ball and drag Johnny. I don't think it's fair. It's almost like a piano teacher that gets disappointed because Billy's not practicing during the week. I like people that like me. People should want to be here. I mean, it's not a forced fit or forced march.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just put that aside. And through our filtering process, besides looking at the resume and your qualifications, I ask you to turn a piece of paper over and give me a couple paragraphs of a coming of age moment, not just to gauge your English and grammar, but just to see if you have depth. In case Michael asks you a real question, can you tell me a time you beat up a bully or saved a kitten? So I can give you a nickname, pick you up on a rainy Wednesday, and kind of understand that you're the sort of dirty dozen that I'm looking for. You're part of the Delta House. There's a lot of fraternities, but you had the Delta House, you know? And it's important that water seeks its own level. Just like people join the military and they choose certain departments in the military, certain services, from the Navy, Air Force, proud Marines, and the Army, and the Coast Guard, and just even the local support. They choose where they belong. But wherever they belong is still very important. It's part of the synergy.
Mm-hmm.
So just starting there can save a lot of time and weight. So then when we're with people, in my honest opinion, I would much prefer somebody with zero experience. Yeah, you'll come to the plate with English, bears the mark of higher education, structure, discipline, cognitive skills, but you also don't have bad habits. I mean, I can really work with this like a squire to a knight. I can
Right.
mold you. You can do it correctly. And a lot of these individuals, when it's their first job or it's the first time a boss really gives them that sort of feedback and attention, they're not jaded yet. Okay. And so I can still preserve that sort of innocence and excitement that they have. And so, fortunately for me, I can be exceptionally selective of the agents that come in here. I'm not looking to carpet bomb and hire thousands like Amazon, whom I compete against. So I can be very selective of the couple dozen that's coming in here. But I also have checkpoints in regards to leadership. I want to make sure that our temperature is good, our pace is good. I want to do the basics. I'm going to show up. You know, when you show up early, you're on time is late. And don't expect me to work 100 hours a week. I'm not there now. I worked 80 hours, but now work less than 40. But there's these sort of things that people judge you on. They do. And so I just want to make sure that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. But you know what I found, which was really the most helpful for me in regards to leadership, not living in an ivory tower. First, knowing your name, which is, you should know that. But when I go into the break room or in the arcade and I'll play pinball or air hockey with the agents, it's kind of fun. Like when the teacher used to play basketball with you, haha, that's funny. Come on, man, this teacher's cool. And so for me, I'll sit at a booth and have pizza with four of the people. And they're looking at me like I'm from outer space. But Michael, isn't that what leaders do?
Yes.
I'm sure Chesty did that with his people.
Yes.
And you know, I think, you know, when you see Patton and you see these generals with their people, that to me is more warm and fuzzy than when they're standing up giving a speech, when they're surrounded with the people. I love that stuff. Do you remember the movie Slapshot? It was a great movie in the 70s with Paul Newman. He was Reggie. He was the coach, but also a player.
Mm-hmm.
I love that sort of stuff. I love when someone in charge is in the field, taking the hits and making the hits. And so for me, yeah, I'm not going to get on the phone and make 400 calls a day. I'm the owner of the company. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm not a freshman. But I tell you what, this is my wheelhouse. It's like when you see these old kung fu movies where they had the bad translations. You throw me in there for one scene, I'll show you the deal. And then I'll go back and sit in the corner. And so, yeah, I am the sensei of my dojo. It's a Philly dojo in Costa Rica. So go figure.
I'm going to share a quick story with you. And me and my wife was actually talking about this. And I'm going to put this story in my book. But it'll be the first story I share about a time when I was in the Marine Corps and when I was in Iraq. So we went out on a mission and we got into a firefight and I was running low on ammunition. And I had two assistants behind me to help me load my bullets. I had Lance Corporal Casanelli and I had Private Parenti. Now, Parenti has been in the Marine Corps over 3.5 years, and he's a private, which he should not be. So he's gotten in trouble several times, demoted several times. Anyhow, he ended up inside of our platoon, and he would be considered your 10% or your weakest link, or military terms, we'll call that person a S-bag, right? And I told my gunny, give him to me. And I got him on my Amtrak. So I drove Amtraks, which is those tanks that are amphibious, which are operating land and water, and we carry infantry on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
And I started working with Parenti, started understanding him, found out he's a kid from Texas, understood what it was like for him growing up in school, under some of his, like, what, you know, just understand how to, like, cognitively understand how he was thinking, how he was processing things. And lo and behold, I had him on my Amtrak while I was in Iraq for over 4 months. This kid became one of my best friends. This kid became, Sergeant Allison, what do you need? Sergeant Allison, can I get this for you? Sergeant Allison, this is what's going on. Sergeant Allison, this is what, do you need this? Do you need that? Oh, and yeah. When shit hit the fan, Parenti was there helping me load bullets and trying to save my life and all of these things, man. I just, to speak to what you're saying, how important it is, how you treat people, how you ruminate with people, and all of these different types of things. When it comes to like leadership, it's just not, you're always like yelling in front of people, man. You could do some of those cool things that you're doing in regards to creating that bond and creating that relationship and still having that same level of respect for you when it comes to leading your team and leading your staff.
Each one's a riddle. It depends on which senses are going to connect. You know what I think the first step you did was saying, I'll take them. When everyone says, you take them. So you don't think it took his defense from a 10 to like a 2 and then from a 2 to a 10 in regards to offense?
Mm-hmm.
You had a loyal pup there. This is someone that was not going to leave your side, and now it's one of your best friends. And yes, got you back alive.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy for that. And Semper Fi. Yeah.
Hoorah. So for that aspiring entrepreneur that's listening to this podcast, some of them think that they could take shortcuts. Interesting with your story, man, you said you got there to Costa Rica and you built it from ground up.
Hmm.
Can you talk how important it is to have systems in place, processes in place, automations in place when it comes
Yes.
to operating a business, managing a business, so people could understand that there's really no shortcut to like actually running a business, successful business, to the point you could sit here and be on this podcast and your business is still running.
People can give you good advice to save you time in regards to certificates you might need, setting up internet equipment. That can save you time and money. So yeah, there are shortcuts that way if you have
Right.
connections. But um, for me, really, it was financial. There are no shortcuts in regards to having coffers, to having money saved, to knowing budgets, to being responsible. And so that was the most important thing for me, that I just didn't get in trouble and that I just did the right things. And so slow and steady is the way to go. As I mentioned earlier, don't overextend yourself. If you have a chance to test certain things while you have your current job, so you don't make that leap of faith, that one in a million shot that doesn't pay off, and then now you can't pay your mortgage and your wife's yelling at you. And so um, I think there's responsible ways to do this, and there's nothing wrong, dude. You got to put your ego aside, and you don't want to act the fool or show weakness. But I tell you what, the IT guy can run circles around me, but when it comes to me making phone calls, I can crush them.
Right.
Tyson knockout shots. And so, as I mentioned before, know where you stand in the team. And for me being here, the greatest thing I've done was to delegate and to promote people. And that's given me the most satisfaction, seeing that people not only stayed with me, but grew with the company and speak well of me. There's no real trick to being an entrepreneur. I think a lot of it is perseverance. Most people will quit 80% in, or they're, as I mentioned earlier, hard on themselves. How about this, my friend? If they give themselves me time to decompress, maybe hitting the gym, in my case, washing a convertible, playing pinball, walking in nature, just where you put the phone away and you can just chill out for a minute. I've seen people rediscover their balance and not escalate out of control, kind of like if you're in a spider's web.
Yeah.
And don't overthink things. But man, if you need an expert to come in or a specialist, you have to do it. And so that's just having that faith. And sometimes, as they say, letting go. And if you do that, you're fine. And also be selective of those that come in. I mean, I'm always wary of masks and people that have alternate expectations, or they're looking to get something and not contribute. And
Mhm.
so I think the best deals are made when people leave something on the table and that are people on level playing fields. So just be very cautious of the people in the beginning that are looking for too much leverage,
Yeah.
because once again, that would make you uncomfortable. I believe in sixth sense and warm fuzzies. And come on, my friend, your intuition is sometimes the Marines can't even teach you. And
Yes.
you have to
Yes,
sometimes
indeed.
go with that. Mhm. I tell you what, too, it also is how they treat others. Do they thank the person that opens the door for them, or do they look down at the employees that I have working with me? How do they treat
Mm.
the people that are on their campaign? Do they curse at them in bold cap and do something that's a Manhattan boiler room but won't work here in Costa Rica? And so it's very delicate. And if everything works out correctly, where there is that meshing and mutual respect, it's a great relationship. But Michael, as much as I wanted to grow, I turned down more potential clients than I accepted. And I
Wow.
think that's what made my family proud of me,
Wow.
because sometimes at the end of the day, buddy, there's just one thing that you know is just not a good fit.
Wow. As we get ready to wrap up, man, can you share with us some lessons, life lessons, business lessons that has helped you along your journey, along your path, that you could leave with our audience that they could use as some key takeaway, man? I know that you have tons of gems, but if you could give us at least 2, 3, 4, something like that, man, I really would appreciate it.
You know, no one likes homework, but when it's fun homework, they do it. Do you remember in class when they brought the TV in? You're like, yeah, you know, I get to watch something today. I'm going to give your audience homework, but fun homework. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Great.
I never had that before. Let's do it.
Some of my favorite influences, they were speakers. Now I'm going to go real old school. The first one is Basil Rathbone. He did old time radio. He was with Nigel Bruce. He did a bunch of Sherlock Holmes. He did about, I think, 14 or 17 movies. But I don't speak Queen's English. And if I tried to act and talk like that, Michael, you'd be like, dude, what's wrong with you? So I'm not going to do that. But you're watching it, something that is so choice. All right, that's number one. I also enjoyed the works of Jeremy Brett, who's also an actor in the 80s that also did a Sherlock Holmes, but a different style. But once again, I'm dealing with A players here. Now, here's some other shows that people should be watching. Pierce Brosnan is Remington Steele before he was James Bond.
I love that show.
It was 70s English. That was the greatest show. I love Remington Steele. That was a lot of studying on that one. And then Face Man from the A-Team, who was known as Templeton Peck, the great actor Dirk Benedict, who was also Starbuck on the original Battlestar Galactica. And so this guy had such a smooth way of talking. He's the one I guess I could relate the most to because it was a North American. But these guys dressed well. They spoke well. And my favorite part was when people would call him out or insult him or try to, you know, make him look stupid. And they would just come back with the greatest rebuttals ever. That was just so so cool. I was like, man, it's like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. I can't even catch up with these guys linguistically. But I tell you what, if your audience wants to study rhetoric and delivery and adjustments of tone and style, well, by all means, this is an excellent homework for your audience. I think they will thoroughly enjoy the works of these amazing artists.
You know what, Richard? I come from a background or the love of art. So I could really draw, I could really paint. And it allowed me to look at life and look at things from a different lens and from a different perspective. And it allowed me to be a really, really good listener. And it helped shape some of my standards in life, and my values in life, in addition to all the other things that came along with that. Can you talk a bit about how important your values and your standards are? Because I could tell that you live by a certain ethic, you live by a certain code, you do things a certain way. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is for you?
Oh, yeah. You know me, I love visuals. Close your eyes. I'd rather be a painting than a print. Nice. I'd rather see the brush strokes. I really want to know it's a unique piece. So I'm true to my art. I'd rather be a free artist than a commissioned artist, even though I'm getting paid for what I do and I have to ramp up people. There's still that magic dust. There's still that pure, romantic, full tarot card side of me that likes to jump clouds and enjoy life. And so I think if you have that sort of purity and you put yourself out there, you know what it does, Michael?
What does it do?
It makes you vulnerable. But when you're vulnerable, you're the most powerful. Look at David the statue. He's not wearing anything. That's one of the biggest images of man that we have out there. And so I like when people have that sort of real, true, core substance. And if you got it, you show it and put it out there for the world. And hopefully it comes back.
Absolutely, indeed. Richard, this interview podcast has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for coming on here and being a guest on the Overcoming Adversity podcast. Before we get out of here, man, I'm going to leave the floor to you. Do you have any parting words that you would like to leave with our audience?
Yes, Sergeant. I think you do a great podcast, and my audience. I'm a part of your audience here. Costa Rica loves you, and I thank you so much for having me on here. Your audience has no idea how many times we tried to book this and had to keep rescheduling and keeping in touch. But you know what it does? It shows how much I wanted to be on your podcast, how much you wanted me as a guest. And I tell you what, my friends, anticipation is one of the greatest drugs ever. I'd prefer to live in Christmas Eve internally than Christmas Day, because having those warm fuzzies just feel great. You know, something good's about to happen. And so
Right.
I think if your audience lives life like that, looking forward to positive little first downs, I think they'll have a very, very fulfilled life.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, man. One last thing, man. If anybody wanted to get a hold of you or do business with you or reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, they buy a first class plane ticket, Michael, come fly down here to Costa, especially when it's cold up there during winter time. But if you're kind enough to show my Facebook fan page, LinkedIn profile, and website, please, they can touch base. And real quick for your audience, Costa Rica is north of Panama, south of Nicaragua. Michael, we're the only democratic society in Central America, and there's no standing army. They put all that money back into education, so there's a 95% literacy rate. Most neutral English accent, Central America, best infrastructure. Amazon, HP, Intel, Oracle are here. We're known for medical tourism and especially ecotourism. We got some of the best surfing in the world.
Oh, wow.
And so people come here to find themselves, lose themselves, and live that pura vida, pure lifestyle. And so, man, I can't thank you enough. I had the best time on your podcast today.
Absolutely, man. Guys, thank you for listening to the Overcoming Adversity podcast. If you like this episode with my friend Richard Blank, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you share with a friend and give us a thumbs up. Until next time, God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.